The show is made possible in part by its supporting sponsors: Blue Water Power Group of Companies, Joe's Discount Tire, and AskGuy.ca. Back at the ISO bar here today. Thank you to the International Symphony Orchestra here for allowing us this space. And for those of you who watch, most of you know I'm a pretty philosophical guy, laws of the universe, all that sort of stuff. And this next gentleman, definitely the laws of the universe have brought us together, and it's a great story. Dana Pitts, thank you so much for your time.
Nice to see you, Dave.
And it really is like you're well, at the time of this recording anyway, you're here in Sarnia, and you got your book signing and everything, and this we've got this here, right? And we'll talk about that, Perpetual Motion. I haven't had a chance to read it, obviously,
but it's brand new off the press. So.
Yeah, like at the time of doing this, just yesterday, you had a book signing at Home Hardware.
Yes, my brother Martin owns Home Hardware on London Road.
Good to have friends in the family.
and he and I talked about it, and we decided to collaborate on a little bit of marketing. And so I've got a nice display in his gift section in the store. And we had his first inaugural book signing or guest speaker kind of thing.
Right.
And it happened to be his brother, me, which worked out really well.
Yeah.
And we had, we had 60-some people there, and I did a reading, and it was well attended and sold lots of books.
Well, that's good. I mean, I got to ask the question. That's probably the cliche question, but why'd you want to write a book?
That is definitely the number one question I get.
Right.
Okay, standard answer. Years ago, I was doing some research for my genealogy, for ancestry, that type of thing. Right. And I found my relatives, and they found out where they were born, who they married, how many kids they had, and where they died. That was it.
Yep.
No individual information, no things about whether they liked to dance, what was their favorite song, did they like to travel,
favorite food,
favorite foods, all of that stuff. Who were their friends, things like that. So when I was doing that, I got thinking, wonder if my grandchildren would want to know that about me.
Right.
and then I thought, I wonder if my children even know that stuff about me. So there you go, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of an aha moment. And prior to all of that, I had always thought that I wanted to at least get something down for my grandkids.
Sure.
So once I started doing my own research on my own grandparents, I realized there's not a lot out there.
Yeah.
So that's why that's the main reason. It was to provide information to my grandkids.
Yeah.
It became so much more.
That's great. Well, and I was reading a bit on your website too. Like you talk about leaving a legacy, right? And I think a lot of times we talk about the legacy is leaving a whole bunch of money, and maybe I changed the world somehow, like I invented the phone, whatever. But the drift that I caught was like that. Like you talk about cave times, and the writings on the cave walls and stuff, and it is important to share those stories too, because as you say, you want them to get it from the horse's mouth.
That's right.
From somebody, because my perception of you might be one thing, but the real you that you share, why is that important to you?
When you look back at, you mentioned cave times.
Yeah.
If they hadn't have scribbled the pictures on the wall and we didn't find them years later, we would know nothing about that, call it generation, call it that era, whatever. When your ancestral lore fades and it's not written down, your history dies.
Yeah.
And it usually lasts about 3 generations. If you think back to your great-great-great-grandfather, do you know anything about him? No, of course not.
My grandfather, but beyond that, no.
But so 3 generations and you are wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
I chose to consider doing something about that. And when you put it in hardcover or softcover, it remains.
Yeah.
And it possibly at some point might be looked at by my great-great-great-grandchildren and say, well, Papa Pitts did this, or he did that, or he was a firefighter, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important to me. Yeah. And I think it's going to be very important to my grandkids also.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like, I love books. I got a shelf in my studio at home. I got tons of books, and I'm hoping to. Well, my wife Jennifer, she kind of laughs at me sometimes because I keep things that I did, flyers that I was wanting book, whatever, and. Yeah, I hear you. I want to leave those to my kids and go, maybe there's a side of Dad they didn't, Papa, whatever that looks like that they didn't know.
They definitely
about,
don't know
right?
all about you.
Yeah.
You can guarantee it.
No. Well, some things I don't want them to know. But yeah, that's a history lesson, I guess, is really what you're doing. Did you have I would imagine that one of the toughest things about putting a book together is not so much what to leave in, but what to leave out. And I don't mean like anything that you don't want anybody to know, but you only got so many pages.
Right.
Was that tough?
It was very tough.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure we'll get into the gist of the story, but it took me approximately 3 months of writing every day to get call it the first draft.
The gist, yeah.
But that was in 2019, and I still had lots of living yet to do. It's 2024, right?
Right.
And the book goes literally. The last thing mentioned in here is January of 24.
Wow.
So there was a lot of stuff after
Yeah.
that. But I did 3 months of getting it down, and then it took probably for me a year of editing down from roughly 130,000 words.
Wow.
Down to about 126,000 words.
You're a patient man.
This book, as it's finished, is 124,000. So wow. I knocked damn close to 6,000 words off.
So was this all you? Did you self-publish, or did you have a book?
Wow. So I professionally edited it.
Yeah.
And I used Friesen Press, which is a self-publishing company, but it's like a hybrid. They really do help you all the way through. Okay. They get the ISBN numbers. They get your copyright for you. They do the editing. The beginning of it is called a manuscript evaluation to make sure that what you're writing is legible.
Right.
So it was all me writing it, and no, I didn't use AI.
Right.
You have to put that in there.
Yeah, no, that's
no AI whatsoever. These are all my words, and it was basically it ended up being a 5-year process.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's probably what's stopping me from writing a book, is because I have a title.
let me. I'm going to just this right here. The end can't be written until you begin.
Yeah.
Your legacy awaits.
Yeah.
This is mine. I made this, and I include it with every book.
Right on.
And I do it because several reasons I wrote the book, but one of the main reasons is because I want to encourage everybody I talk to to at least write it down.
Yeah.
You don't have to publish the book. Have it someplace where a couple of generations from now, a stick,
and I do. It's not as organized as that.
Well, and it may be someday.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm getting at. Mine wasn't organized either. I had binders all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And I just one day I decided.
I like that you said write it down, because if my wife and my son watch this, like I all the time am famous for saying, you didn't remember that because you didn't write it down, or if you got that idea, write it down.
Mm-hmm.
If you got. Because a genius only remembers 35%, and I don't know about you, but I'm no genius.
No.
So write it down,
Yeah.
and if anything, that it gets discovered, and who knows, maybe if you didn't write the book, maybe somebody takes it and puts it together, and how they, it's almost like a dying breed, kind of like quilting,
Sure.
That, because we're electronics and everything, right now. But let's go back in time a little bit more, though. Like
we'll talk about this.
Yeah, we will for sure. And I'm excited to get into that. But you were originally from Sarnia?
Originally from Nova Scotia.
Sorry, I've got it backwards.
No, that's okay.
But you tell the story.
I'm originally from Nova Scotia. I lived born in Antigonish, kind of almost to the Cabot, just south of the Cabot Trail.
Okay.
My dad needed to find some work, so he came to Ontario. Basically followed his brother is what he did, and So I got here in 1959, and we lived here until they moved. My mom and dad raised a brood of children. 10 altogether.
Wow.
Still 7
Wouldn't
left.
want to feed them today.
And they moved back to Nova Scotia in 1985.
Okay.
So by that time, I was into my career and everything else.
Sure.
But and then I eventually moved back to Nova Scotia, and we'll discuss that in a bit. But it ended up being full circle.
Yeah.
Because this is an interesting fact. The day that I landed back in Nova Scotia, 62 years earlier to that day, was the day that Mom and Dad landed in Sarnia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Again,
unplanned laws of the universe.
Totally unplanned.
Yeah.
But history. Yeah. I love history.
I think it's important that we remember it. Even the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, definitely. And in this book, there's good, there's bad, and there's ugly.
Is that right?
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
that's good. That's
oh,
good.
yes.
Well, because let's. I don't want to go down any rabbit holes, but cancel culture. It's the ugly side of things. Sometimes, like removing statues or whatever. Can you give us some thought on that?
I have a kind of an intimate knowledge of a little bit of that, because part of my journey has been living in Kingston. I lived in Kingston for 3 years.
Right.
Did all kinds of things in Kingston. During that time was when Sir John A. Macdonald was basically canceled. Right. And he was our first prime minister.
I know.
Right?
Look,
so
he was still the prime minister.
To the point where they were taking statues down, literally toppling statues, spray painting them, doing whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Your history is your history. You can't change what happened. You don't have to repeat it.
That's right.
But you can't change it.
Important lessons.
And the key there is you learn from it.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it. I don't think they should be taking down statues. I don't think they should be celebrating them. They may, if it's there, okay, leave it.
But I mean, are we going to start going through museums and going like, oh, there's a thing, if we go down Leamington, there's the Underground Railroad. We're going to say, it could go down that rabbit hole, right, so to speak. Yeah. And are we in trouble? Are we headed in the wrong direction as far as not recognizing and acknowledging and then, like you say?
I would hope that at some point there will be some level heads prevail and say, we cannot change history.
Yeah.
We don't have to repeat it, and we can learn from it, and we can move on, and we can be stronger because of the history that we learned before.
Right.
When you were a kid, you didn't know how to flush the toilet when you were just a kid.
No,
you had to learn that, right?
Yeah.
And you learned it for reasons, right?
Right.
Sanitary reasons.
Right.
Well, that's no different than history. You don't have to repeat the.
Yeah. You can flush that part down
you
the
can
toilet.
Flush it down the toilet.
You need to know how to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. We're your first career. Have you had more? I know you were fire guy and all that stuff, but was there what was before that?
Yeah, what was before that? When I got out of school, I did a few small jobs. I worked at Standard Auto Glass, putting in windshields. I worked at Sears in the repair department, repairing drills. And then I went to Dow Chemical.
Oh.
And I worked at Dow in the caustic unit, Block 44, for just about 2 years.
Oh.
And it was at that time that the story comes that I ended up having an interview at the fire department. So yeah.
What made you go? What
How did that happen?
What switch occurred that he said because that was kind of an extreme turn for you, wasn't it?
I went to a wedding one night. A buddy of mine's sister was getting married, and I was sitting there having a beer with him, sitting at the table, and this tall, lanky character walks up to the table, and my buddy says, "Hi, Jack. How are you? Dana, meet my Uncle Jack." So I introduced to Jack. And in the conversation, I said, "Jack, what do you do?" And at the time, he said, "Well, I'm a fireman. We call ourselves firefighters."
Right.
But he said, "I'm a fireman." And I said, "Oh, that's a cool job. I'm 20 years old."
Right.
that's a cool job. And he goes, oh, we're hiring.
Oh.
Oh, really? Not once ever did I think about becoming a firefighter. So I threw a resume together, which I had never done before.
Right.
I didn't even know probably what the word resume meant. And
I wouldn't know how to do it
no,
now.
of course. So I put a rough resume together and I took it up to City Hall. And a couple weeks later, I got a call. And I went in, did my the aptitude test and stuff like that, about 2 hours. And I came out, and I guess they must have been grading them right away because Chief Hansen and Chief Knight called me into their office. And they said, talked for a little bit, and he said, we really like the results of your testing here. Would you be interested in a job? And I said, well, yeah, that's what I applied for.
Yeah.
And he said, well, can you start Monday?
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, no, I can't start Monday. I'm going to Hawaii on Sunday. 20-year-old knows the thing, right? And he said, Chief Hansen said, well, can you get out of that? And I said, no. He said, okay, well, sir, I guess you're not the guy then. And I said, well, if you ever need another firefighter, just give me a call sometime.
Right.
So
wow.
I went back to Dow Chemical. And I worked there from March until September, and then I got a call in September, and they said, "Are you still interested in the job?" Right. I said, "Well, of course."
Yeah.
Can you start in October? Yes, I can.
No, I'm going back to Hawaii.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So they gave me a month, and I started October 17th, and walked into the job.
Wow.
As a rookie. So
boy, you don't do it like that anymore, do you? Right?
Sure don't. No. No. When I tell that story to the rookies, or when I was upstairs or in management, I would tell that story, and they just shake their heads, going, "Oh, it's not like that today,"
No, so, no. If you were booked going to Hawaii, though, like, how do you get out of that?
No. At 20 years old, you don't. Because you're going to Hawaii to have a great time. I can get a job anytime, right?
So that career started, and then fast forward through all that, and then you became a deputy chief.
Yes. So in 2006, the chief at the time was looking for a deputy chief, and he was kind of between a rock and a hard place, and so he had a bunch of interviews and stuff like that. And as it turns out, he didn't get his man, put it that way.
Okay.
And he and I were good friends. I'd known him for years. So I called him up, and I was consoling. Too bad, like I know you really want a deputy chief and stuff like that, and yeah. So we talked for about 10 minutes, and finally I was just about to hang up, and honest to God, Dave, I don't, again, universe. I don't know why I said this, but just as I was hanging up, I grabbed the phone and I said, Pat, and I just yelled his name. Yeah. And I said, what about me? I can't repeat what he said.
Right. Right.
But it's in the book.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And he said, if I had known that you were interested in that job, I wouldn't be having this difficulty right now.
Right.
So I ended up a week later becoming deputy chief at Sarnia Fire.
Wow. Is there a disconnect from? I mean, obviously, deputy chief, or then even chief, is a different type of role. Mm-hmm. Is there a disconnect, or like what's the big change going from firefighter to a real big position of authority and the politics involved?
Okay, you can't. The only way it's going to change is if you allow it to change. Okay, and if you don't do your job, then you're not fit for that role.
Right.
When I started, prior to me starting that, we'll go back 2 steps.
Sure.
For 16 years, I was involved with the Firefighters Association.
Right.
Executive board. I did everything from treasurer, secretary, right up to president. And that role really enhanced my marketability.
Right.
Okay. So when I took the deputy's job, I would wake up every morning, even prior to that, but I would wake up every morning, and the thought in my mind was, how am I going to make Sarnia Fire better today?
Okay.
Every day. I think of that when I get up in the morning.
Yep.
And so with that in mind, I didn't go into the role with an authoritarian attitude and, you know, I got stripes on my shoulder. I'm the boss.
Right.
Nope, that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with the guys. I worked with the salespeople. I worked with the chief. I worked with City Hall. Every step of it was to make that job a better job.
Yeah.
If the guys needed a tool, something new, I'd go research it, or I'd get them to research it, and they'd come back with their stats and their stuff, and I'd get it for them because they needed it.
Yeah.
Right? And it was a very interesting time at Sarnia Fire. We really did a lot of growth.
Yeah.
I'm very, very proud of that part of my career.
Well, because there was that time, if I recall too, like there was I call it transitioning in how things were done to technology.
Oh,
right?
technology, sure. Yeah.
And I think I remember, you know, like communication. That was a huge issue.
Yes.
Because there was an old communication system that wasn't reliable.
No, that's true. Yeah.
And were you involved with
Absolutely,
that?
yeah. Pat and I put that whole new communication system in.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the communications in the fire hall, all the computers and everything else. We had these antiquated, boxy computers and everything else, and we finally got City Hall to understand that they needed to replace these computers every 2 years. You know, so we finally got a revolving system where we always had new computers. It worked out perfect.
Yeah.
And it's there was a lot of changes. Even prior to that, when I was still a firefighter and I was president of the association, I was doing negotiations for the amalgamation of the contracts between Clearwater and Sarnia.
Oh yeah, Clearwater and Sarnia. Oh,
and it took us 18 months to put that collective agreement together, and nobody gave us a shot in hell to do it. While I was doing that, I ended up buying a little Mac Classic. I don't know if you remember those computers. One of the first Macintosh. I bought one personally. Wasn't the association's
for $5 million.
Yeah, it was very expensive, and I used that little screen to put all of that information for 18 months together, and that saved us to get that amalgamated contract.
Wow!
So I actually ushered in the technological era of the union too. So there you go.
There you go.
I like remembering all that kind of stuff because it's things I did, right? So yeah.
What about family? You have kids?
I do. I have two children. Stephanie is living in Welland, and she's got my two granddaughters. They're twins.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Lena and Noelle. And my son is in Kingston, and he's got three: Lachlan, Mila, and Sloan.
And what do they do?
So Stephanie works as a in the museum system. Oh. So she is, and I probably will get it wrong, but she's a curator of some sort, acquisitions manager. Yep. She buys the stuff and all that kind of stuff, and then catalogs it and all that stuff. And she's so good at her job. And Sean works at Costco in the deli meats live foods department and loves it. Just
Kingston's a great city.
Kingston is a wonderful.
I'd never been there until a couple of years ago, and I stopped and it's like, wow, the waterfront.
I lived right on the waterfront.
Even City Hall is like a historical, beautiful place.
And my loft was right next door to City Hall.
Oh wow!
City Hall was here, and my loft was right there. Yeah, it was a great place to live for 3 years.
Yeah. How was that raising children?
My children are everything.
Yeah.
My children are everything. They were. They're going to laugh if they see this. They were the best kids. They never gave me any problems. They were.
Oh, come on!
No, I'm serious. Not one bad thing happened.
That's boring.
It was very boring, but darn, it was good. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, it was refreshing.
So, good times raising children.
Yes, it was wonderful. Yeah. And with my time off at the fire hall, I had 4 days on and 4 days off.
Oh yeah, right.
And so I did have lots of time to spend with my children, and they were raised well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good that you can say
and
that.
Now that they I mean it. Yeah. And now that they have their own kids, it's wonderful to see them treating their children the same way, and their children are being raised as just beautiful kids. So yeah. As a matter of fact, when I leave here next week, I'm leaving Sarnia next Thursday. I'm going to see my twins. So
perfect.
Very excited about that.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
How is Did you ever slide down the pole? Because they don't do that much anymore.
East Street always had 2 poles.
Yeah.
I think they might be. I think they're down to 1 now.
Yeah.
And Wellington Street always had a pole.
Yeah.
When I started, there were no gates around it. It was just a hole.
Yeah.
And you grabbed onto the pole and down you go. And many times I saw bodies piled up at the bottom and broken legs and stuff. I mean, it happened, Dave. It really did.
Yeah.
But since then, they've put housing around it, and you can't get through unless you open this gate. And and I don't even know. I haven't been back to the fire hall for quite a while.
I know some guys over there now. They're like, we don't even like.
Yeah, and they. Yeah, we.
I remember being in public school, Confed Central, and they built Wellington Street.
Right.
And we got a tour, and that was like they had the pole there, and it was like a hatch.
Yeah,
it was the pole when the weight went down on the pole. Yeah. Opened up the hatch so you could go.
That's the mechanism.
And we all wanted to slide down, of course, but of course, no way, that's not happening.
No.
And did you know Hank Schmidt?
Very well. Hank was one of my very good friends.
It was sad when he left us. But I remember going down there, and they would pull the truck out with the big ladder, and he took my kids and some other kids and put them in the bucket and put them way up there.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, can I slide down the pole? And he said, nope. I said, you put my kids 10 miles up in the air? But, well, you know, anyway.
Yeah, you can hurt yourself a lot easier falling than you can going up.
But it's funny, I remember, because that was like I guess for Sarnia at the time, a state-of-the-art fire hall, wasn't it, on Wellington Street?
Oh, it absolutely was, yes. When it was built, it had everything.
Yeah.
It had everything.
And Blackwell Side Road, did you remember Blackwell Side Road?
Yeah, I was, I never was in the old one. I remember it, but when they built the newer station out there, it was, again, a substation though.
Sure.
You know, not much to it. It's just kind of walls and a.
Well, I'm talking like Blackwell Side Road, right?
The old Blackwell,
I remember, because we lived down the street.
Yeah.
And
I remember it. I remembered. I don't remember. I don't ever remember thinking I was in.
I used to ride my bicycle down there and go in and bug the guys.
Yeah.
And so did you ever have, like, it sounds like you really enjoyed that time as a firefighter and deputy. There was nothing else that you along the way said, what about this or that, or were you were settled into that really well?
Firefighting was my life, my passion, my career.
Yeah.
Did I do other things? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I painted. I wallpapered. I sold fire-related equipment. I did lots of things. I used my photography back then, certainly not as much as I'm doing now. But yes, I had lots of other interests, but there was nothing that could take the passion out of that job.
Yeah.
And if I was 21 years old again, Dave, I'd do it again.
Yeah, is that right?
I really would.
That's great. You can say that.
I would go up to City Hall and tell them I'm not going to Hawaii.
Yeah. Wow. Maybe at this age. I don't know. Yeah. No, that's because the reason I asked that is I think there's so many people out there that are doing stuff that just to make the money.
Yep.
Make the money. How does like I talk to some young folks. I teach at the college one day a week, and how do you tell those 17-year-olds to do what you love? But I don't know what I love. I like, at that age, like I know so many things. Well, you even say like 20 years old. Nope, going to Hawaii. I'm going to party. I'm going to girls, whatever. Yeah. And how does someone find it?
It takes a lot of effort and a lot of, I guess, you have to find your passion. If you're doing something and you don't want to go home, then you got to kind of look at that and say, that might be it, right? But if you're doing something, digging a hole, to whatever, working at Dow Chemical.
Right.
I made great money at Dow Chemical. It wasn't my passion by any means. It was hot and dirty and
Is it all about the passion, though? Because I got a lot of passions, but that doesn't mean I'm going to make a living at it.
No, you don't necessarily make a living with your passionate things. Yeah. You might be a photographer and never make a penny.
Right.
But you're passionate about
Most
it.
Don't.
Yeah. Most don't. I agree with you. Yeah. It's no different than any other career.
Yeah.
You can make a career out of being an artist,
but
you're not necessarily going to make. I'm never going to make $1 million selling the book. Nope. Even if I write 20 more. Writing is, unless you're a Stephen King or a Clive Cussler or a James
Why not
Patterson.
You got lots of stories.
Sure. Why not me? But I got to tell you, you got to get that first one in first. So there's my first one. Yeah. Not everybody starts with their autobiography.
No.
Someone starts with something else and then builds up to that. But yeah, it's talking to 17-year-olds. Here, I'll give you this example. When we as management went through the rookie classes and we had, like, say, eight firefighters hired. Okay. We would bring them into the room when they were just done their training and they were just about to become fully fledged on the floor, on the trucks firefighters. And of course they're not seasoned yet, but so we would go in, the two deputy chiefs and the chief and I, we would go in and we would give them the speech, and it basically started like, you know what, you just won the lottery. Yeah. Because not everybody gets to be a firefighter. Not everybody gets to fulfill their passion. Yeah. And you got to know that the fire services career invokes a pretty heady passion. Yeah. Male and female. Absolutely.
Well, we glorified it when we were younger. I think, like, when I was in school, it was like you wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, police officer, fireman. Those were the big, right? Right. But and like movies and being the hero, and certainly.
And that's what we dispel. Yeah. Put that away. Put that ego away. Stick it in the box, and
you have to. I think.
That's right. And do your job.
Just for safety reasons.
And do your job to the best of your ability, and learn, and be safe, and watch out for your brother, sister firefighter, and all of that. And when they see it coming from the bosses and people who've been there for 30 years, they're learning something. Yeah. The other thing was, when I was interviewing, I was part of the interview process when we were hiring firefighters, and I could tell. They would sit there and they would, like, one guy would sit there and he'd be like this and he'd be answering questions just like that. He knew his answers. Great. And another guy would be just dripping sweat. And you go, I'm not, so you just know, you get that feeling, right?
It's a certain personality that can do the job, right? Yeah. And you mentioned, like women in fighting fires now. And were you around when that started happening?
I was around. And I can honestly say that we interviewed several women during my tenure. It just didn't work out that a woman was hired, because I want the best people for the job, right? Yeah. And if she is the best person for the job, she's getting the job. Right. It didn't happen then, but shortly after, they hired their first woman, and now I'm not sure, they might have 8 or 10.
I
don't know how many, but they're doing. I hear. I have lots of firefighter friends still, and they're all doing great, and I love it. I think it's a great thing for the job.
The college here's got one of the best programs between here and I think it's Texas.
I know one of the female college students that has graduated, and she is as passionate as anybody. Awesome. Yeah, it's just great. So.
You mentioned your photography. Yes. You dabble in that, like it's is it on your list to do more of, or did you do more of before?
Yeah, so I started when I was 16, somewhere on there, and I bought my first camera, and it was a film camera, a Canon AE1. They had just come out on the market. Oh, wow. And so I learned basically how to take pictures. That much, So finally, and I had a couple of the mini digitals, the 3.2 megapixel sure shots, there's a couple of those, and I played with those for a while. But when I retired, someone said to me, many people said to me, so what are your goals in retirement? And I said, I have 3 goals. I said, I want to up my photography, I want to write, and I want to travel. I think I've done one.
Right.
So
next.
Next. So photography was always there, and now that I was retired, I wanted to up my game. Okay. So when I moved to Kingston, I bought my first digital, and shortly after that, I enrolled in my first workshop, and it snowballed. So I take pictures every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I don't take pictures every day, it's pretty well 5 to 6 days that I take pictures.
So aside from your phone.
Yep. Oh no. No. I use my.
I know, but I mean, so is the camera out in the car?
The camera is not in the car because I left it there because I don't like it sitting in the heat.
Right.
I don't like the camera bag.
Because what's that saying? Is it a photographer never forgets his camera?
Oh, if I'm 99% of the time it's in the car.
Yeah.
The reason why it's not right now because I just don't want it sitting.
Yeah,
in the heat.
I get that. It makes sense.
But it's
not far
beside
away.
the door, where I am,
Yeah.
and if I'm going someplace knowing that there's even a possible potential, it's with me. And I have like big lenses, little lenses, round lenses, wide lenses.
Do you have a style that you prefer, like some landscape or food or
that's
people?
Interesting. Your style evolves.
Yeah.
I started out, of course, with landscape because landscape is an easy, I shouldn't say easy.
It's a great place to start.
There's so much technical things to know, but at least it's...
Lighting alone.
Yeah, at least you can push a shutter and get something and go, okay, now I can improve on that. Whereas portraits, if you're not doing natural light portraits, meaning outside or window light, if you're not doing that, you've got to use strobes and umbrellas and things like that. I had no idea about that until I went to these workshops, and then I bought all the equipment.
3-point lighting only goes so far.
It only goes so far. So now, if you go on my my photography website and look at and I got different breakdowns, landscape and photography and composites. There's nothing. So the picture on the front of this book is my picture, but it's a composite of 1, 2, 3. I think there's only 3 pictures in there. Yeah. So
I love the cover.
Yeah, but it's put together with programs, right?
Right. Good look at that one. Yeah.
And and that's called composite photography. And I only got into that, I'd say, within the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And so that's another style. And that is something that not a lot of people do because there's a big learning curve.
Yeah.
I chose to tackle that learning curve because that's just me.
So you love learning.
I love.
Well, you said before you love history.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's learning.
I
never stop learning, right?
Never stop learning. Yeah. And that's what I would tell those 17-year-olds that you were talking about earlier.
Right.
Don't go a day without learning something new.
Yeah, never stop. And keep reading, because I forget what the stat is, but like most when they get out of high school or not even high school, but post-grad, university or college, barely pick up a book, right? If you're just joining us, we're talking with Dana Pitts and Perpetual Motion, an autobiography of relative history. I love how it's not just an autobiography. No. It's an autobiography of relative history. When you say relative,
it's a play on words.
Is it? Yeah,
yes,
it's your relatives and it's relative.
The information is relative to me and relative to my relatives.
Yeah.
But it's also got some relative history in there too.
Yeah. So, what am I gonna get in the first 10 pages? It's almost like a movie, right? Like you got so much time to grab my attention so that I keep, what am I going to get in the first 10 pages here?
So I wrote the book in what is called a chronological arc, which means you write it from start to finish.
Okay.
Now, I didn't write the book that way because I wrote this and I wrote this and I wrote this, and then but I put it together in that way. Yeah. So the first 3 or 4 pages is my explanation, basically my preface on why I wrote the book. Mm-hmm. Just what I told you earlier about my grandchildren and things like that. Yep. So you're going to get that to get interested. And then the very first paragraph in the very first chapter is not necessarily, the first few lines is not even about me. It's about Neil Armstrong.
Oh, really?
Neil Armstrong was born on August 5th, my birthday. Many years earlier. I've 30, whatever.
A few years.
Yeah, a few years earlier. And so, and my line in the book is, he was the most famous person to be born on that date, and he still is.
Right on.
In other words, I'm nowhere near that, right? So, but anyways, that's the beginning, And so the first few pages, the first chapter is basically about me coming into this world, growing up. Who were my parents? Who were my grandparents? Where did we live? How many kids did I have? How many siblings did I have? That type of thing. It's just a general, okay, it's an autobiography. You need to know who that guy is.
Who are we talking about? Yeah.
So I don't go into ridiculous depth. And so it's so boring that people are going, oh, are you ever going to stop? No.
Right.
I get through that real quickly.
I can't imagine that would happen. I think you're a great storyteller so far, what I've seen anyway. But you talk about parents. So what was growing up like for you? Like, did you learn how you dealt with your children? Like, did you pass that on from yours?
Yes. As I said, my mother birthed 10 kids. We lost 2 relatively early, and then we had a tragic accident several years later. So we're down to 7.
Okay.
But she raised us. First of all, she was an English teacher in her youth.
Oh.
And so we spoke correctly,
Right.
or else. Yes. My mother was educated. My father had grade 8 education.
Okay.
But he was a genius when it came to anything to do with working with his hands.
Oh yeah.
Making things, carpentry, art. He could draw.
Oh.
He would look at you and he'd go, and he'd have you just like a photograph.
Wow.
He was amazing.
Very
so interesting enough, not that I even had remote skills on my artistic talents until much later. But my brother Greg could take and draw. He drew all his life, right? Or he's been drawing all his life,
Yeah.
So we did inherit the traits of our parents.
Right. Yeah.
We just didn't notice them at first. So, but my parents were the greatest parents in the world.
Close family.
Very close.
Yeah, I would think
Very
large
close.
families usually
Yeah.
are, I think. Right?
We were just huggers.
Brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters, yeah.
Is there a favorite in there?
Favorite brothers and sisters? All of them.
Yeah, good answer.
Good answer.
What am I supposed to say to that one? Right? Yeah. No, that's great.
5 girls and 3 boys. So is what we had for most, because the one boy and 1 girl died early. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So.
Is that in here too?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is so much in there.
There's a journey.
It's my journey.
Yeah.
It's got everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't hold back. I made sure that if you're gonna know who I am, you're gonna know who I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, when you had the book signing at
Mhm.
the store, and did you get to see some people that you haven't seen in a long time? Like I remember
since high
I
school.
saw
Since high school.
Carol was there. And Kim saw you. Yeah.
A couple walked in, and
Did you go,
yeah,
wow?
And well, I looked at them, and I didn't quite even know who they were. I mean, I maybe a little
Boy,
bit.
you look old.
Yeah. And when they introduced themselves, literally, I had not seen them since 1974.
That's amazing, though. Right?
But they were there. Yeah.
So
yeah, and
the conversations,
others, yeah.
what come out of that?
Oh, it was great. And the reason why they were there is because one of them lived in forget now, Calgary, and another one lived someplace like far away, and they just happened to be in town. And their brother, who is who I went to school with, so they were getting books signed for their brother, and then they bought books too. So it was great. Like, it was amazing. Yeah. One of the ladies, she owned. Are you familiar with down Corona Way, right across from Antonio's Pizza? And it was a Sincerely Bed and Breakfast.
Yep.
Okay. Well, she owned Ida Swartz. She owned Sincerely Bed and Breakfast. And when I was stuck for a week prior to me driving out to Nova Scotia, I didn't even have a place to stay because it's a long story, but I didn't. I needed to find a place. So I called up Ida and I said, do you have any room? She goes, yes, I've got room. And I will take you because it's COVID and, we can isolate and everything else. Well, in that week, we had the most wonderful conversations, and we'd sit, 6 feet apart in these big armchairs and have great conversations. She's an amazing lady. And we got to know each other really well. So I wrote about it in the book.
Nice.
Well, when she got the book, I didn't tell her. When she got the book, she read it. Well, she texted me and she, oh my God, that's just great. And, so
it's like a shout out on the radio.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
famous now. That's great.
It was really good. So So lots of people like that. It was
I like that you shared that story because, well, I like to talk. That's no secret. But are we doing enough of that? With social media and everything. I mean, you're on social media,
Yes.
obviously, because you have to be, I guess, for the book and everything else. But do you use social media to communicate, or do you use it as minimal as possible?
I use it more, and I'm going to use the word professionally, but I don't mean that in that sense of the word. I use it to make sure that people know about this.
Yeah.
I use it so they know about my photography, and I mainly use it for communicating with my kids because they're not in town, right?
Yeah.
But as far as if I want to talk to friends, I'll call them.
Yeah.
I like a conversation,
Yeah.
especially when buddy mine
like
down
this, face to face.
and buddy mine downriver happens to like scotch, and so we have our scotch time. So you call me up and you say, you got any scotch? I said, yep. And he's here, I'm out there, and we pour scotch. We sit there, we talk.
There you go. Yeah.
So it's great. Yeah. Well, I didn't know I was a storyteller until I started telling stories, and then now.
There's just so much we can get. Even pre-COVID, I was sort of doing interviews live remotely because it was convenient. And then I was doing more in person again, and then COVID hit, and I was like, really? And then I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? Because there's no events going on, all this stuff, right?
Right.
And then I did, when COVID kind of opened things up again, I did some in-person, or I kept doing the live a little bit, and then I was like, I said to my wife, I'm like, I need this.
Yeah.
Right? Because even an introvert needs human touch, all our senses, right?
I'm the
just
same
from
way.
shaking a hand, you get a vibe too. Looking in the,
I hated the fact we couldn't shake hands.
I know. Me
I hated
too.
the fact we couldn't hug.
I'm a hugger too. Right?
Yes.
So there you go.
When I left Sarnia, the day I drove out of Sarnia, I stopped at my sister's house to say goodbye, and we didn't hug. And that, to this day, it bothers me.
I remember one time not hugging my kids because they'd been at their mother's and then come over. Yeah, so I get that. And
when I was in Kingston, seeing my son and his 5-month-old grandson, my first grandson, I've had granddaughters, but my 5-month-old grandson, I just wanted to hold him so bad, and I couldn't.
And knowing now what we know, you probably could have, knowing what we know now, right? But I mean,
what an
experience.
No way was I going to endanger those people.
No, that's right.
Because I just wasn't.
So we talk about COVID in the book too.
Yes. Yeah. I write about my experience, all of that, what I just told you, plus driving out to Nova Scotia and getting there and isolating for 2 weeks and not having a fork to eat supper with, and
you wrote the book, and aside from, you probably learned some historical things about you and your families, but the fundamentals of it all and the doing it. What's the biggest lesson you learned from writing a book?
What a segue. At the end of the book, I literally have 23 life lessons.
Really?
There are 23 life lessons.
I haven't read the book yet. So that wasn't planned.
Yeah. Nope. And I love. Wow. This is the synchronicity that's going on here.
Right.
I wrote 23 life lessons of the things that I learned.
Oh wow.
So I didn't say this is life lesson number 1. The first lesson is learn how to make soup. Okay.
Oh, I can't do that. I burn water.
No, but see that's the thing.
Yeah.
What you don't know about me is I owned a restaurant with my son in Kingston after I retired. We owned a restaurant for 3 years, and I made soup every day. So
I love soup.
So and that skill, and what I say in the book is, if you can master that skill and then improve on it even a little bit, it will sustain you forever.
Wow.
So, but the life lessons is what I'm getting at. The book is full of the ups, the downs, the hardships, the anxiety, the good, the bad, depression, all of that kind of stuff. It's all in there, and how I became who I am today, which is a absolutely fantastically happy retiree. But I'm a survivor.
Yeah.
And I know people may think, okay, what did you survive? Well, read the book.
But we've all got something we've
Yes.
survived. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be a wow,
No,
change the world moment.
But it's all talked about.
Because there's the world, and then it's like this is
Yep.
you and this
Mhm.
is me, our world, right? And
Yeah.
and that's what I love about doing this again in person, because everybody's got a story,
Right.
and I think every story is important
Yeah.
because it affects somebody some way, somehow.
In my introduction last night, when I was talking about the book, the one thing I said was, you don't have to be rich and famous
Nope.
in order to have a good storyline.
Mhm.
Why shouldn't my history be important or interesting to people?
Mm.
Just, so I didn't make a movie. So what? Right? I have a lot of things going on in this.
Yeah.
There's 100 or 337 pages of stuff in there. So
I always said too, like we go back to the reading. I always say to my students, like, if I came to you and said, "Here's 12 books, read them," they go, "Ugh." Just read 10 pages of a good book.
Yep.
That's 300 pages every day, and you'll have read 12 books in a year.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation, because I do feel like we're clicking in here.
Absolutely.
You're a philosophical guy, aren't you?
Very much so.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
You know.
Look out.
You know, we talked about the laws of the universe and stuff like that. Many years ago, a beautiful friend of mine told me about the laws of attraction,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of went, okay, yeah, and I started kind of thinking about it, and I started putting them into practice. And now in this book, there are at least 10 different examples of proven laws of attraction. I wanted that to happen, and it happened because I drew it. I willed it in, and they're in the book. So yes, I definitely am
There's a saying, I can't remember exactly who, but it's you don't pursue success, you attract it.
Mhm.
Right? And that's like, who do you want to work with? Who do you want to be around? All that stuff. And my viewers are going, "Oh, here he goes again," because I say a lot of it every time, but it's so true, right? And whether it's laws of the universe, whether that's God for you, whether that's just a belief system, whatever that is, hey, whatever works, right? We're all trying to get to the same destination, really, at the end of the day, right? Which is happiness.
You're gonna laugh when you read, because that's one of my lessons. Exactly what you said.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you,
Exactly.
I can't wait to dive into it, and I'm so grateful for your time, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. And by the way, this is something you didn't know. I'm gifting you that book.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Well, thank you very much.
And I will sign it.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's Perpetual Motion, an autobiography of relative history. I can't wait to. Can I just go right to the back to the 23 lessons?
Sure, you
right
can.
in there. You can get this at which home hardware?
On London Road,
Yeah.
1272 London Road.
Okay,
Blue Water, Home Hardware, and Building Center.
right on. Go in and get the book. And is it available online too?
It's available on Amazon.ca.
Okay.
It's available on Amazon.com, and it's also available in ebook.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. It's been a great conversation, and thank you all for joining. You know what's coming, right? I say it. Click the like, click the love, but please click the share button so we can share Dana's story and everybody else that I have here on the show. But right now, here it is. That's all the time I got for you this week. Have a great week and an even better weekend. We'll see you next time on the show.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye for now. Easy peasy.